Hi, Peter Charles here, Folk for Life Fly Fishing. And today let's talk about the very first things we should do when we want to get into fly fishing. Uh, Frankly, I understand it. We all want to go out, buy a rod, reel and line, get some flies and go fishing. And as an instructor, I have had raw beginners come out to me many, many times with a rod, reel and line that they've already bought, and they've gone and bought the tackle before they have what they're going to be doing with it. They don't have a clue. But they bought the tackle. Some guy 3,000 miles away or 5,000 kilometers away on the internet has told them what to buy, and they've gone out and bought it. Now they come up to me and go, let's go fishing. Teach me how to use this thing. And I go, oh, did they have to do that? Couldn't they waited? Okay, so here's what you should really be doing. The number one thing, the very first thing you should do before you buy so much as a fly is know your local fishery. What are you going to be catching on that fly rod? As a perfect example, when I was a kid, I saved up my paper route money. Actually, no, probably my allowance. The very first rod, I keep saying paper route money on other videos. I think it was my allowance. And I went to Seaway Sports in Cornwall and I bought a fly rod. And I had no idea what I was buying. There was no instructors then. There was nobody. It was Eastern Ontario. It was a warm water fishery. Nobody fly fished in Eastern Ontario. Thankfully, the store owner had a clue, and he sold me a warm water rig. He sold me a 9-weight, which, considering this, there was a lot of pike in our water, that wasn't a bad choice. And there were largemouth too. So yeah, it was not a bad choice for a beginner. And old 9-weights aren't like 9-weights today. They were quite, bendy. So, small fish would have bend in them. So he knew what he was doing. He sold me the right thing, but that doesn't always happen. Especially if you're buying online, you're at the mercy of the online gods. So your first thing is know your local fishery. Is it rivers, lakes, ponds, creek? Is it trout, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, pike, carp, salmon, steelhead? What is it? What are you fishing for? And where are you fishing? Those are the two vital questions you have to answer first. And if you're just going to go to just replicate your conventional fishing with a fly rod, that's fine. But be aware that's what you're doing. So you're going to say, well, I use a medium spinning rod for smallmouth bass, and your local fly shop goes, I know what to sell you. So you have to be clear, very crystal clear about where you're fishing and what you're fishing for. Because you will never buy the right tackle if you're relying on your own judgment and you haven't answered those questions. So once you've answered those questions, you're able to go to a store, ask somebody who knows what they're doing what you should use. Okay, the next step on that is to get some instruction. I don't care whether it's an instructor, it's a guide, you go to Learn to Fly Fish course, whatever it is. Don't simply get a rod, reel, line, some flies, and then rush out to your local water and start flogging the water to death, hoping like hell you'll catch something. Because you know what will happen? You'll get fed up, you won't catch anything, and you'll shove the rod in the closet, or you'll stuck it on that big auction site in the sky and get rid of it. So what you really want to do is get some instruction. Once you've got some instruction, now you have an idea what it is you're doing. You could rely on a knowledgeable friend. If you've got a really good fly fishing buddy who really knows his stuff, that's fine. But a lot of people don't have that. It's often the blind leading the blind when it comes to these situations. So rather than get into that and just replicating your buddy's mistakes, get some qualified instruction, whether it's a guide, an instructor, a course offered by a store, whatever it is. Get some instruction so you know what you're doing. And then once you've got to that stage, you have to realize that you're not going to catch a whole lot to begin with. And the third step is perseverance. You have to keep plugging away in the early days. I've had this experience as an instructor and as a guide multiple times where I've got somebody out and I'm trying to help them get into fish, and I've worked my butt off all day to get them into fish. And it's not working. At the end of the day, the guy says, here's my rod, show me how to do it. Bang, fish, there you go. And the reality is, when you're starting out, you're not going to be good at it. It's a harsh reality, but you're not going to be good at it. And you have to put in the time before you get good at it. I wasn't good at it when I started. It took me quite a while to catch my first trout on a fly. Trust me, and my first fish that came on flies were more luck than skill. I'll tell you that right now. So you really do have to put in the time and be prepared to not do well. So I guess that's managing expectations. Be aware that when you go out there for your first few times, do you know how I caught my first trout? I'll tell you that story to give you an idea how pathetic I was. I'm out fishing with two other guys, one of which really knew his stuff. And I was trying to catch this trout that was rising under cover of some bushes. And I couldn't get a fly into that fish to save my life. And my friends were, saying, okay, come on up. We're moving upstream. Move with us. And I finally went, oh, I don't want to leave this fish. Fine, okay, fine, I'll go on. And I was so dejected at that point, I didn't even bother reeling up my line. I just left it all out. I had a elk hair caddis on the end, and I started walking upstream, and my elk hair caddis was drifting and dragging in the current underwater. It had sunk, and a little rainbow hit it. That's my first fish, my first trout. I'd caught smallmouth and largemouth bass and pike on flies. My first trout came on me walking upstream, dragging an elk hair caddis behind me. So yeah, you really have to put in your time. And so those three things, let's cover them off. Know your local fishery, what you're going to be fishing for, get some instruction, manage expectations. You do those three things and you're going to be a really good fly fisherman before too long. But if you don't do those three things, odds are you're going to be selling your gear or letting it collect dust in a closet. And, it costs, you can buy relatively cheap fly fishing gear, but it still costs money. So give that some thought. Do those three things: your fishery, instruction, manage expectations, and you're good to go. Cheers.